Employment in South Africa grew at the annualized rate of 6.8% for the month of March. That's outstripping growth in the previous 2 months. That's according to the latest installment of the Adcorp Employment Index. And joining us to give us more of the numbers, we're joined by Loane Sharp, who's Labour Market Analyst at Adcorp. Hi, Loane.
Hi, David.
Give us the overall view there. What's behind that 6.8%?
Well, it was pretty generalized throughout the economy, which reverses a trend we've observed over the last 12 months. Most employment over the last year was concentrated in the domestic demand-related industries. So retail and wholesale trade was strong, transport and logistics was strong, but for the first time in the last 12 months, really, the production sectors have come through, mining and manufacturing, pointing to a somewhat better condition, not only in the local economy, but perhaps internationally as well. The one thing is employers are very concerned about the future. So most of the growth in jobs was in temporary work rather than permanent jobs. But nonetheless, a generalized increase and quite a strong showing, much stronger growth than in January or February.
Temporary, as you say, 11.3%, permanent jobs up by 9.2%, but both of those solid numbers. Informal sector, a more modest 0.6%. So what's behind that?
Well, I think particularly the formal economy is connected to our international trading partners. So when international conditions normalize to some extent, as they have in the US and to some extent in Europe, I think the formal economy shows strength. When the domestic economy relative to the international economy shows strength, then we see the informal sector come through. So it's very much a domestic versus foreign interplay at work.
You also talk about categories like transport and logistics, electricity and utilities, mining. Transport and logistics, 15%. That would seem to indicate more economic activity generally.
Yes, very much so. A lot of it connected to the domestic economy, which I think is showing much greater strength than most people realize, particularly for the levels of employment that we're seeing in the domestic economy. The economy must be doing a whole lot better than most people appreciate. So I think if it's domestic demand related, we can expect these employment figures to continue for some time.
That sounds good. We were talking earlier about the debate that you had about a month ago, I think, on whose stats are right, Stats
Yes.
SA or
Yes.
yours. Any waves from that, and has that debate continued?
Yes, the debate does continue. Just last week we were invited by the Mapungubwe Institute, which is a really highly regarded think tank for strategic reflection. We were invited to debate with Stats SA and some of our detractors, and I think it was a very constructive debate. We got the numbers finally on the table, and this debate to date has been really more about personalities than numbers. So we consider the case closed until Stats SA gives us some answers to the very numerical questions we have.
What's the essence of the difference?
The crux is relates to the informal sector, how much activity there is in the informal economy. Stats SA says the informal sector employs only 2.1 million people. We say it employs 6.2 million people. Now that's not employment in the formal sense of having an employment contract or a medical aid or pension fund. We're talking about people who are really economically active. So they may still be in precarious employment in the informal sector, but we have a major difference with Stats SA. We use, as part of our technique, Stats SA's own data. So, for example, Stats SA collects data on a quarterly basis about how many people belong to medical aids. We then go to the Council for Medical Schemes and find the actual figure, and we find a 25% difference, an undercount on Stats SA's part on variable after variable after variable. The average undercount of about 25 different variables by Stats SA is about 28%. And we're challenging them to say, look, answer our questions on why Stats SA's figures consistently undercount the level of employment in the country.
Well, we better leave that there because they're not here to answer you as they were last time, but it remains certainly encouraging that there is this activity. That's the broad thing. You also focus in this particular report on the trade unions. You talk about the loss of membership, which means a loss of revenue.
Yes.
You also draw a conclusion that a lot of the activity in the trade union sector is to do with their reduction in membership, their steady decline in membership.
Yes. You know, this is a worldwide rather than a South African specific phenomenon. Over the last 12 months alone, trade unions in South Africa lost 130,000 members, representing a loss of membership dues of nearly 100 million rand just in the last 12 months. So certainly declining membership they're paying attention to. Union membership has now declined as a proportion of the workforce to the lowest level since these data were recorded in 2006. So yes, I think unions have a crisis of relevance on their hands. Job seekers who on average are 26 years old compared to established workers who on average 43 years old are adding a new generational dynamic to union membership. Some unions are responding by adding financial products like medical aids and affordable pension provident funds, commuter insurance, etc., to their offerings to members, and some are not making those changes. And it seems that members are voting with their feet.
Of course, we have to remember that the unions are not on the side of the poor, although they may also be.
Yes,
they may say they are, but they're on the side of their own members, and one should be clear about that. You do pull everything together. You say the difficulties that unions have in organising in fragmented, heavily segmented sectors, construction, retail, finance, others where they concentrated in one site, like mining and construction, in some cases, easy to organise. So it's within the movement there are big differences.
Yes, well, you know, trade unions are economic institutions just like any other, and they can be evaluated in that way. They have revenues, they have costs, they have costs of doing business, which involve mostly costs of organising. They have competition from rivals, they have competition from legal aid societies, Stokvels and many others. So they behave like economic entities in just the usual way. And I think many of them are getting a sharp lesson in what it means to have a mandate from workers.
There was a big headline this morning about corporate cash pile. Which suggests corporates hanging on to cash, not wanting to invest whereas they might. Does this kind of information, in your experience, lead to optimism and possibly increased investment down the line?
I think so. I think the more that we take out the voodoo in our analysis of political and economic entities like trade unions and like labour brokers for that matter, the more we come to a sense of the economic realities behind the political sensations. And I think it does lead to some optimism that trade unions are battling for survival.